Welcome to the Denteamology Live, where we're talking teams and its optimization through great leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Becky Chen, and this is episode number 8. Now, in this episode today, I'm so pleased to be speaking to Dr. Viet Le and Dr. Chirag Devani about how we can actively look after our teams' mental health well-being. Now, a few months ago, when Viet and I got talking about mental health wellbeing course, a course that they had rolled out into the dental community, I became really intrigued, and it's definitely something that I'm really interested and keen to hear about. I know lots of you have already commented, as soon as I said that we're going to do this live, a lot of you will be sort of looking out for this live today. And so, yeah, I'm very, very interested to hear what they've got to say. So thank you both so much for, taking the time to come and jump on this live for us after a long day of work.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, and thank you for giving us your time too. Yeah.
No, that's my absolute pleasure. So, gentlemen, would you like to sort of please give the audience a brief introduction about yourselves, the practice and the teams that you work with?
Yeah, so I'm Viet, obviously, and I graduated in 2005. I worked in public for a year, and then worked private, worked public on the Sunshine Coast, and then worked private at the Gold Coast and in Brisbane. And I've been at my current place since 2010, and I bought in as a partner in 2015. So we're a 4-chair practice, and in a few months' time, we bought a new premise, and we're going to move into a new 6-chair practice in November. So yeah, as for team dynamics, we've got 5 dentists, Chirag being one of them, and 2 oral health therapists, and 14 auxiliary.
Yeah. And so, just off the record, Chirag, is Viet a good boss?
Yeah, he's all right. no, he's. Oh, well, I better say he's for the purposes of this. No, I'm joking. No. So yeah, but my history is so currently I'm working at Viet and Mel's practice. I've been there since 2012, so it's almost been 10 years now. But I also graduated in 2005 at UQ. And worked in the government on the Sunshine Coast, and then worked in private practice in Brisbane and Melbourne until then I lived overseas for a couple of years, and then when I came back, I started working with these guys. So it's been a really, really nice time. So yeah, I've been for 10 years, so I guess he's all right.
Yeah. So what got you guys into developing this course that you have?
So this actual course, it's been a bit of a sort of a slow burn. Like, it's sort of been building up. We didn't envisage doing a course from the get-go or anything like that. But we spent many years individually, like working on our own mental health, and then I think it just got to a point where we felt that this need, desire to share what we've learned, just because of the fact that it's been so beneficial for our own lives, and for me personally. Like, it's not just for my own life, but also my team as well, and within the practice. And I just think it's just a great environment for me to be in. And I'm biased, of course, being an owner, but that's the reason why we felt that there was a need in the world, and obviously in dentistry as well.
Yeah. For me, I think the first idea of some of this happened. The idea was born after a Christmas party. I think at our practice in 2017 or 18, when I was just talking casually to the dentists that work with us, and a few topics came up, like things like feeling isolated at work, or feeling stressed, with certain procedures, or just everyday life as a dentist. And then because I've done a lot of work on myself in this field already, I think I kind of went to Viet and said, hey, because we've both been through quite a lot. I'm sure Viet will share soon what he's been through as well to get to that point. And the dentist that talked to me, I was like, Man, I'd love to have a chat. And I think the first idea that came was, why don't we just have a dentist meeting where we don't talk about dentistry, but specifically focus on the mental health side. That was the initial. It was supposed to be just a dinner. I think that was the idea, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then, there's other things that happened, which we'll share later. It kind of, one thing led to the other, and then all of a sudden now we've got this workshop that we do, and then many other things. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. It's funny. I find a lot of things come from, people's own pain points, and then they sort of utilize that, and they overcome it, and then they utilize that, and then they can give it to somebody else as well as another tool.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. So why has mental health become such a big topic sort of among team members and, and just individuals these days?
Well, yeah, I think to answer that question, I think it's always been an issue. I think mental health and mental well-being and even mental illness has been around obviously for millennia, and I think it's becoming more of a topic now because I think it is a little bit less taboo to talk about. But I think for me, from dental school, it's been there. Like there has been stresses and mental health issues, and I observed that not just in myself, but in my peers and everybody. So I don't think it's a new issue. I think it's a issue that's been around for a long time. I don't know what Pierre thinks of that.
Yeah, I think it's something that's sort of people are sort of talking about more, and I think it's the awareness it's getting to a point now of obviously with COVID and everything, the straw that broke the camel's back. But as Shrag said, it's always been there. I've told the story before. Like last year, I went to my son's high school interview, and they talk about just normal questions and everything. And one of the questions they asked was, "Is there any history in the family of anxiety or depression?" And and for me, I have had some sort of history. Unfortunately, I didn't want that to affect his entry into the high school because I don't believe, I feel like I'm probably more equipped to help him with anything. But yeah, the fact that they were asking that question means that it's something that's, they're aware of and it's been present in the schools for quite a long period of time. For them to even ask, I guess. And it's just, for me, it was just crazy. Yeah.
I was going to add as well, I think one thing where you are right in your question saying, has it become an issue more recently? One thing that just came to me now is I think even in our career, when we started, for example, to get a job as a dentist was relatively easy. We graduated in 2005. And also your working hours were they were kind of normal, 8 to 5 or whatever it was. And I think at the time, perhaps, this is just, I've not done any study on this, but this is anecdotal, perhaps with more graduates coming through, with more dentists springing up, the competition in the market going up, people are open later. There's, you're working till 7 o'clock at night. Today, both Fit and I finished early, and we finished at 6 today. But I think, with dentists working, and younger dentists as well, probably feeling perhaps a bit more pressure than before because there's not such a shoe-in to get a job so easily. Perhaps when we all graduated. And I think also maybe with the social media aspect, maybe people see beautiful work and there's such beautiful work on social media, and perhaps a new grad looking at that, or earlier somebody who's just graduated recently, they may feel a slight amount of pressure to meet certain expectations, which, certainly we didn't have those expectations myself when we graduated. I think we were happy just to get through the day.
Oh, yeah. I think even just today, we got like a resume from a final year student for a job. Even the resume, like he put on there photos of his work, his clinical work, his root canals, his bridges he's done and all that. And I was messaging my practice manager saying, man, if I was graduating this year, my resume would be like, I would not get a look in. Would not get a look in. Like, it's just like that, like Shrag said, like back in the day, there's not as much competition. You just had a piece of paper and just write, your GPA on there.
What's your phone number?
Yeah, that's it. Done. But now it's like, it's so competitive. Yeah. It's just crazy.
So, yeah, I imagine that surely has had an effect on people. Like, people maybe graduating after, say, 2012 or 13. So I think that's probably added to the issue. But dentistry was already, as we all know, I think a relatively stressful profession. You throw in all with other things, and then like Ed said, you throw in COVID, and I think that could be the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think many people might be feeling it now a lot more. But on a positive side, on a flip side, I think it's great that mental health is no longer as taboo as it was when we graduated. For me, I think people weren't talking about it as much. This is again anecdotally. I just didn't observe anyone talking about mental health. Whereas I think now, I mean, it's great. We do talk about it, and with it's things like Are You Okay Day and things like that. So I think that's a really huge positive. And I guess we just want to join that and say, hey, we're ready and happy and ready to be vulnerable to share how we feel, because I think isn't that the best way to start? Like, we can share how we feel and hopefully create an environment, facilitate some discussions to, I think it's one of the quickest ways to heal through this is just to have a conversation.
Yes, just to open up that conversation, isn't it, and acknowledge what's happening.
Well, yeah, and again, if you look at it, not to look at it too deeply, but dentists in general, I think we can say have personalities where they're perhaps, that type A or, like perfectionists, which may struggle to be vulnerable and share, hey, I've got a weakness in certain things. And then to see maybe another dentist go, oh man, like for example, I don't know, I'm not very good at, let's say surgicals, for example. The new grad might go, oh wow, I can say that. I can say that, I'm not good at this. And I think that would create a nice environment. So I think just the personality types, probably in our field, doctors, dentists, lawyers, engineers, the high, functioning people, perhaps don't get a chance to share how they're feeling. And again, surely that's going to have an effect on their mental health.
Do you feel like with the mental health, from your experiences working with different practices and also just within your own practice, that the mental health is more so related to clinicians, or does it also involve, the support staff, or a bit of everything? Because I'd like to think, not I'd like to think, but I do know that at one point, say, for example, at my practice, it was so prevalent, it was probably more than half the people on my team had some sort of mental health, and they were seeing a shrink, or they were on some sort of plan to help them through. Do you feel like it's an industry related thing, or what are your thoughts, or what have you guys sort of encountered?
Yeah, I think when I first started like looking into it personally, I thought, we sort of hear about, dentistry having the highest suicide rates and things like that. So, we are under a lot of stress. But then we need to realize that life in itself is stressful. So we've got everything that's outside and we sort of bring it in as well. So, the auxiliary staff, they've got their own stresses, their mums and looking after their kids and all that stuff as well. And I think, I think the stress is sort of spread within the practice. It's not just limited to the clinicians, because sometimes what can happen is it's sort of dependent on, as a clinician, how we handle the stress. Now, if we can't handle the stress well, then we pass that on. Yeah. So it starts with us. Like, that's where it begins, and then it sort of filters through the practice, because then they start talking to each other, go, oh, so and so is not having a good day, and then that just adds stress, and everyone's just walking on eggshells all day, things like that. So I do believe, and we need to realize that everyone has something potentially. It's not just us as clinicians. We need to sort of open our eyes to just a bit wider, I guess, and just understand how we can be affecting the team.
So I'm going to be devil's advocate here. There will be some practice owners out there who would be like, okay, I get it, you've got mental health illness, but so what? Just keep going. Or, you've got you're under some sort of mental health stuff. What's the motivation here for the owners to actually, really look after their team members from a think health sort of well-being sort of front? What's the motivation for them?
Okay. I think we've discussed previously ourselves, like when we do our workshops and things like this, so many benefits for an owner, especially, and for the team as well. I think to go back a bit, like we always talk about sort of changing how we look at mental health and just making sure that everyone's on the same page as to what we're referring to, I guess. Like when we say, oh, let's work on the team's mental health. And I think what we've done in our workshops and when we've spoken to a lot of people is when we say the words mental health, it sort of triggers a negative response, I guess. And it's words pop into mind such as anxiety, depression, suicide, those sort of things. But we need to understand that that's a mental illness. Okay, so that's, you know, that's way outside our scope and way outside an owner's scope to help someone with that. That's we always advocate for seeking professional help. But I think what we want owners to understand is when you look at your team's mental health, we shouldn't go, oh, is anyone anxious or depressed? And if not, then they're okay. Like that doesn't mean that they're mentally healthy. And we use an analogy, it's like this, you know, those patients that come in and they go, oh, you know, none of my teeth are sore. They should be okay. You know, so just because you don't have pain does not mean your teeth are dentally sound. And just because you're not anxious or depressed does not mean that you're mentally healthy. There's this space in between. And that space is sort of where we can be helping the team. You know, this, and we refer to that as mental health problems. And that's things such as like your inability to deal with stress, excessive worry, reactive communication, withdrawal from others, like mood changes, things like that. And that's part of everyday life. And it's part of most practices, I believe, anyways. It's sort of in there somewhere. So there's an issue there. And I think sometimes when we sort of say, oh, how's your team's mental health? We sort of don't look at it from that perspective. We just go, oh, no one's depressed, they're fine. Which is also a mistake as well, because I know a lot of people are depressed, and if you talk to them, they seem happy. So, it's very easy to mask, and that's how they live their whole lives, right? So,
No, massively. I disagree with that. It's the high functioning. I think it's more about facilitating the conversation. People don't know how people are doing, and I think as an owner, like to at least open up that discussion and facilitate that that opportunity, it can be, I think, remarkably beneficial because of simple things like that Viet said. Just to reiterate, like I think reactive communication, that's probably the biggest one you're going to get in a dental practice. So communication that's perhaps someone lashes out at someone and then it causes an issue. That's a sign of it's not a mental illness. We all react sometimes. So it's about, I think, shining a light on areas that you can improve. So it's not about curing a problem. Again, that's more mental illness, and that's like, just to reiterate, that's something completely different. This is about like making your team stronger and better. And surely, if you have a team that's communicating well, that enjoys their coming to work because it's a great environment, I think it doesn't need to be said that there's got to be tangible changes in productivity and happiness. It's not just about productivity, but as a business owner, that's important. So it needs to be said. I think there will be changes in productivity, but also, I mean, just going to dental practice and having fun at work. I mean, that's amazing, because I don't think everybody has that environment, and it's about creating that environment. And I think that's going to be massively beneficial for practice owners. And I think there's a lot more benefits that people go through.
Like just touching on what Shrav was talking about, like about communication. I think the biggest learning point that I came about, like we came about, like when we talk about mental health and whatnot, is this idea that our mental well-being is sort of linked to how we communicate. Like because of the fact that the better we are at our mental well-being, it sort of helps us regulate our emotions better. So, if you think about like, when we're frustrated or angry, or even we're sad or lonely, like our communication changes. Like we can either be more aggressive or defensive, or we withdraw, right? So if we can sort of improve our mental health and sort of communicate better, then that means that okay, now we're building better relationships. Okay, not just at work, but even outside. So now that those relationships, those connections, a byproduct of that, you think about your close relationships with your friends, you trust them more, right? And so therefore you're building trust within the team, and that's the foundation of all business, right?
Oh, it's massive.
Yeah, like I think I've read the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I don't know if you've read it yourself. Yeah, that bottom layer is trust. Everything's built on trust. So, as a business, we need to build that trust, and that's through communication and giving people the time and space to talk about things and listening to them and things like that. But with that connection, as Chirag touched on, it's like you're building a better culture. And with that culture, you go, well, as a team member, why would I want to leave? Like, this place is great. Like, it's it fulfills me. And I will say, like, at our practice, by next year, I think half of our auxiliary team would have been there for at least 10 years.
Amazing.
So, yeah, and that's not including, like, we had a team member who had career change last year, and she had been there for 13 years. So, that sort of longevity, like hanging around, that loyalty, to put a price on that, obviously you save on recruitment, you save on training. There's other things that it sort of adds to it as well. I feel like it creates a sort of like a familiar environment for, us as well. Like, it creates that routine so you can focus on other things. But also for patients, like the fact that they come in and they see a familiar face, it makes them feel comfortable, because you think about, you go anywhere, you see something different, you feel a bit uneasy. But if you've got someone that you can connect with, then you go, you feel comfort. And most patients come in with a bit of anxiety, but just having that familiar face, knowing that you can be looked after, like I don't know if it plays a part. Like, I think 4 of our 5 front desks are one of those that have been there for 10 years. Whether that's contributed to our rebooking rates. Like, our rebooking rates across the board probably sit between the mid 80s to low 90s. So look, I could say it's down to our providers, clinicians like Chirag or whatnot, but I'm sure our front desk plays a part as well.
Oh, huge! It's always teamwork, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, and if I could add, I was going to say, talking of just that segue from what we had said, perhaps something that's really obvious, which we haven't even touched on, communication. As this is speaking from the dentists and the providers, the oral health therapists and the hygienists. If they are brilliant communicators, I think it's a no-brainer that you're going to have a higher patient retention rate, right? And again, I know this isn't. We're not doing a communication course for dentists closing their cases. What do we call it? Case conversion. But it clearly covers it, because this is one of actually the original reasons we started. Was a colleague of mine, a very kind colleague who at a different practice that I worked at. He was one of the, I think, catalysts in this workshop starting, because he told me, he said, I'm observing the way you communicate, and I'm not seeing someone communicate like this to the patient. And it's nothing crazy that I was doing. He said to me, "What's your secret?" And I go, "Mate, there's no secret." I go, "I just listen to the patient." And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm like, no. Like, I just sit, give the patient eye contact, and just listen to them." And he's like, "Oh yeah," because when I observed the way he was doing it, perhaps there wasn't as much presence when speaking to the patient. I mean, I think I'm stating something very obtuse and very obvious, but when I reflected upon my own career, I wasn't like that in the beginning. I was stressed out about the 1,000 things that a new grad is stressed out about. And I only learned this stuff after a lot of the things that I went through, which I think we'll talk about later. But I worked for 8 to 10 years, and I went away for a couple of years and came back. And that's when I made the shift. And so I think, it needs to be said that not only, of course, we're going to talk about communication with the auxiliaries, the front desk, and the teamwork, but just the individual providers. If they can take that communication to the patient and they're consistent, and it's happening naturally with their own personality, it's not that we're training them how to communicate. just a natural way of being present with your patient. That's actually where I've got most of my feedback from patients. And again, just to tie in with other stuff, they also say, I love the way you and your DA work together. And I always say, we've known each other since we were in our 20s, because we've been there for so long. But they also like, no, but you guys have the chemistry, like a team chemistry. It's like, yeah, and I think it is because of this is the extra stuff that we worked on, because before I wasn't coming to work and creating that bond maybe as much until we did a lot of the things, like, for example, Viet does this thing, which he introduced the practice called, well, I might let you talk about the checking in the baggage thing. You say it better. It's like that. Yeah.
Like, I think when I first, like, even before, like, when I just bought into the practice, like, we had, even before that, we have this mindset that you leave your baggage at the door. Like, come in, it's work, let's focus, let's do everything at 100%. Just leave whatever you got outside. And it wasn't until I sort of learned a bit more about, these mental health problems and, mental illness and whatnot, and go, that's bloody hard to do. Like, to leave everything outside. So now we've got this new mantra, and it's
Sorry, can you say that again? You just went out for 1 sec there.
So our new mantra is to check in your baggage. Yep. So basically, there's usually something that, affects us to the point where it affects our work. And so we make it a thing where just to talk to someone about, let someone know, like, how you're feeling. Because a lot of times previously, when you don't talk about it, people think you're just slacking off, or you're, not pulling your weight and things like that. But when you tell someone, oh, by the way, I'm having a tough time because of this, everyone shows a lot more support. Everyone's like, it's a lot more compassion and understanding. And there's times where I come in the morning and I tell my assistant, I'm just not feeling it today. Like, I just not really up for it. And she would go out of her way to, make it a great day. Like, she puts a lot more energy in, and it's just sometimes you got to carry a bit more weight, for the team's sake and things like that. So,
I think that's been a huge thing that I've noticed in working at this practice, and one of the reasons I've been there for a decade, because this kind of stuff as an associate, makes a massive difference. There's nothing more stressful, I think, as an associate, not knowing, having consistency, like with things like your DA, and to be able to be, tell your DA, or even vice versa, for if my DA is having a bad day, I'm like, yeah, we have a conversation, and then I lift my game a little bit and talk a bit more to the patients, and maybe I'll do a bit extra for her as well, and maybe we won't run 10 minutes to lunch that day, but we'll go the extra mile for each other. And I think long term that has an effect. It's a slow burn, but long term that really shifts a lot of things within you. And then I find myself, when I'm driving to work, I think a lot of dentists that I've spoken to, driving to work sometimes they're a little bit anxious about what's upcoming. But I have felt in time working, with this way, I'm actually kind of looking forward to meeting everyone to catch up. And again, it's not saying that this is we're just talking and socializing. The work gets done. The work that's kind of set. It's a priority, of course. This is an extra thing on top. And yeah, it's kind of like, for example, today, just today, I was driving to work. I was looking forward to seeing my Tuesday DA. I get her every Tuesday, and when I got there, like, she was on holidays. I'd forgotten, and I was like, oh man, I was looking forward to catching up. So that, like, little things like that, I would never, maybe in the past, have felt that, but now I do.
Yeah. That's wonderful, isn't it? It is funny. We often do talk about leaving the baggage at the door, but I was doing a reading. So between my clinical coordinator and myself, we do talk about that. We're like, yep, you come to work, you leave your baggage at the door, you do your thing. But yeah, definitely I've read in books, they're saying it's actually not possible because, we are all whole as human beings. And I guess, you do sort of bring whatever it is to work. You just need to make sure that it doesn't quite affect it and if it does, then you need to talk about it. That's completely right. You need to talk about it to actually, you can't just go, just shove it under the carpet, nothing happened, and I'll just push through. It doesn't work that way either.
Well, that's what causes mental health problems. Yeah, because what if if you're doing 5-day weeks and your next holiday is not till 6 weeks away, that is going to build up. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to be devil's advocate again. With this method, have you ever had a situation where people do check in their baggage and they would keep rechecking in their baggage on a regular basis over the same thing over and over again at work?
Yeah, like I think that's something that we would have a chat to them about. Like we have had people that are just too overwhelmed with what is happening outside of work, and then we sort of remind them that we sort of have a chat about how we can help, like how we can find that balance, I guess. But it's that I think we've built a culture that's that commitment to the team. So if they sort of feel guilty, like if they're not helping the team out, I guess there's that connection there. Like you want to help. So if they feel that they can't do that, then in our team, anyways, I'm not saying that every team would be like this. They would go, you know what, I need some time off, and they would take that time off themselves. Like we have had instances that dentists and as you probably know, with SFAs, we're not an employer. Like, they're running their own business and whatnot. So we can't tell them to take time off. Like, that's up to them. But we've had dentists go, you know what, I need to cut down my days for now, for a few months, just so that I can sort of get a bit better, just get a handle on things, just stress and workload. As soon as they see the effect of the behaviors on the team, like, it's all that commitment to the team. So, we've been very lucky in that regard that, our dentists have been willing and open. I think they understand what we stand for, and that sort of how we treat staff and that communication is right up there. And if you feel that there's something that is blocking that, then you need to work on it. Like, so yeah, we're pretty lucky in that regard. And yes, I can't say that that's going to work for everyone, but that's how it works in our practice anyways.
Yeah. That's not luck, Viet. I think we all create our own luck.
Yeah.
You're just being humble. Hey, I've actually got a question that's come in. Are you guys happy to take questions?
Yeah.
So I'll pop this one here so you guys can see it as well. And I think it's pretty relevant to what we're talking about at the moment. Someone just said, how do you help and manage the new graduate stress levels?
I'll let you answer it.
All right. That's a really, good question. I mean, that's a very broad question, isn't it? That is like the question of what do we do, in a way. So how do we help manage the new graduate stress levels? This is going to be a bit of a joke. It's a 6-hour workshop to answer that question. But what I'll do is I'll try and answer it in a succinct way. Do you agree that is actually the whole thing? So I'll do it. I'll try.
Just give it all away.
I'll summarize the whole workshop in, give me 3 minutes and I'll do it. But basically, firstly, I think let's acknowledge it. It is stressful. Like being a new graduate, we're not going to be able to have zero stress. I think that needs to be stated first off the bat. Like it's whether you're a doctor or a dentist or if you're a lawyer or whatever, any high end profession, you're going to feel anxious in your first few years. In sport, if you're an athlete and you're making a debut as a cricketer for Australia, you're going to be nervous walking out there if you're an opening batsman. So I think it needs to be acknowledged. It's probably a good thing if you're feeling some level of anxiety, stress. That means you care. So great. That's really good that you care. I think what's scary is a new grad who's not stressed and not anxious, because you're like, you probably should be. So why are you complacent? Like, are you feeling some level of complacency? You know what I mean? So I think firstly, to the new graduate ask the question, I think it's a good thing because it means you care a lot. So the first thing I say off the bat is to be extremely kind to yourself, because it is what it is. Dentistry is stressful. So get that out of the way. I think the first thing I would say for a new graduate specifically is to talk to your colleagues, talk to your mentors, talk to not only your peers, but probably a dentist who's been out for a bit longer. So whether it's been 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, to get that acknowledgement that, of that, say how you're feeling. And they'll probably say, yep, well, this is exactly how I felt. So getting that out of the way, how do we manage it? How do we manage the stress? I think the first thing that we talk about a lot is just describing what mental health is. So having an awareness of where they're at, in their mental health. But in terms of getting straight to the tools that we use, there's, a general approach to your stress levels. So the general approach is simple things, which we've all heard of. So things like get adequate rest, make sure your nutrition's sorted out, like look after the foundation. So get your rest, your nutrition, your exercise, make sure that you try and hopefully have a good group of peers around you, whether it be family, friends, and dentists, colleagues who you can speak to and connect with. And then the last thing in the general approach, I'd say, is your work-life balance. So if you're a new grad, don't work 6 days a week, straight off the bat. I believe that might be putting too much pressure on yourself. So I've been trying to find some level of balance where you have it 1 or 2 days in the week where, you have some time put aside for your own development. I think that's really important. And also just for rest, like you got to relax as well. You've just done 12 years of school and 5 years of uni, like you can relax, and you got a long way ahead of you. You got a long career ahead of you. So I think, just firstly, get your foundation right. And then the more specific tools, which we talk about, there's an acronym which Viet created. And look, this is the big point I have to make, very important. This is before COVID, okay? He named it MASK. So it was before COVID. His intuition's obviously very strong. And he created an acronym called MASK. And what that acronym stands for, M is mindfulness, A is appreciation and gratitude, S is self-worth, and K is kindness and service. So that is the area and the recipe that we're focused on more than the general approach towards stress, because we assume that everybody knows the general approach. In that assumption that everybody knows the general approach, the question is, why is everybody not doing it? Because I know I don't have the perfect diet and sleep and exercise and all that. So why are we not doing it? And that's what Viet and I we found. We're like, hang on, the information's out there, but why is everybody so stressed? Not just in dentistry, I think the general population. And we felt that there was something missing, and that's what made us, do this. So we feel there's a root cause underneath this. What makes somebody make sure they get adequate rest? What makes someone choose the right meal? What makes someone go to the gym or not go to the gym? What is that thing which causes? Because it can't be just pure willpower and motivation, because then we would all be ripped with six packs. Why aren't we all there? And there's a reason, and we believe it's because of mental health, not mental illness, but mental health. How healthy are we mentally? How in touch are we? How self-aware are we? So that's where I won't tell me if I'm going into too much detail. You can stop me because I don't want to run into a 6-hour workshop. But so really quickly for the new grad that asked the question, there's tools to develop MASK. So there's tools I don't have time to define, all those things, but I think self-worth, gratitude, and kindness and service are relatively easy. I think mindfulness is a bit of a new agey word, but for today, I'll quickly define it as just being present. So being able to be present in the moment. Think of it, for the new grad asked, if you're the patient, that you're able to actually listen to what they're saying and you're not stressed about how you're going to deliver what they're asking for. That's an example of being present. Okay. So then we go into tools on how to develop this in yourself.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the tools, again, which we are excited to share with people, and we've already done it a couple of times in these workshops. So the tools to develop MASK so we start with introspection in general. So that's literally just seeing where you're at. So whether you like to write or journal or whatever routine you have, there's many different ways of doing it. But the first thing is just checking in with yourself and seeing where you're at. And clearly, the person asked the question, they do know where they're at because they've acknowledged, I'm stressed. So the first thing I would say is start writing how you're feeling. It doesn't have to be at the same time every day. Just when it comes up, write it down. Even if it's in the notes section on your iPhone, write down how you're feeling, because that will stop the loop of the stress. Because sometimes when we're stressed, we tend to go in a bit of an anxious loop. Just start writing down, and you'll start seeing some patterns. You'll see what the problem is. So introspection to see what the problem is. The second thing we go into in the tools is breathing and conscious breathing. And we have a bit of fun with this because we get to look back at our old physiology and we talk about fun things like the vagus nerve and the fight and flight response. But to keep it simple for today, we talk a lot about breathing, and that's probably the key for a tool because it can be used instantly. Talk about that. And the third one, we talk about meditation, but you can call it, it's a stillness exercise or meditation. But again, to go away from the difficult definitions of that word, it's just practicing being present. That's what we describe meditation. That's for now. There is a lot more that we do, but for today, that's enough. So, yeah, did you want to add anything to that? It's a hard question to answer because it is the whole thing. But yeah.
I'm not quite sure also the question whether it's related to how the owners can support the new grads as well. And I think
that's probably what it's talking about as well. Like how do we support? And I think it's great though, like what Chirag said is great. You know, the new grads themselves need to have these tools up their sleeves, don't they? They need to have these tools to utilize it. And I guess the other aspect is, you know, as owners, how do we help them? Well, it sounds like we need to sign up to this course. Workshop.
Yeah, for sure. I think as owners, we need to have some sort of understanding. Like we need to take ourselves back to when we were new grads and understand what it was that caused us stress. So, you know, one of the main things is our experience. We don't have experience in doing whatever it is. And unfortunately, you can't change that. You need to just do it, like to get the experience. But there's other things that sort of add to the stress that we can control. Okay, so a lot of like time, like how much time you give yourself. So it's allowing a new grad to book a bit longer for certain procedures, so they have that time. So you're taking away a level of stress and anxiety. And I think we sort of discussed this previously, like preparation, like spending the time with the new grad, talking through a procedure and just laying it all out, just to make it a bit easier. So they've got it mapped out in their head as to what it's happening step by step. And, you know, once you understand that, it sort of gives comfort when you go in. And I think just being supportive. And I think as like, if I just go back to when I was a new grad, you know, when you're doing something or you make a mistake, there's a fair bit of shame, I guess. Like, you know, there's a lot of this inner dialogue, and you start, you know, beating yourself up about it. So, you know, the last thing you want is someone else to beat me up too, like, you know, to give me a mouthful. Like, if just being supportive and just saying, like, it's okay, like, to make a mistake, as long as you learn from it. Like, that's the main thing. Like, mistakes are okay in life. It's just what you get out of it. If you keep on doing the same mistake, that's a choice. Like, you're not doing anything. Like, but it's okay to make a mistake and go, okay, what can I do better next time? And just encouraging that and just having that conversation continually with a new grad, and just letting them understand that, you know, you felt that way too. Like, sometimes they feel they're the only one, you know, especially when you're a new grad coming into a practice with all these experienced dentists. You know, you feel like you're, you know, weighing down the team a bit, but, you know, it's letting them know that, you know what, you know, we've all been there. It's just part of the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It is true. And I think, you know, being able to take a time capsule back to when we were new grads and then being able to just tap into that so that we can gain more perspective so that we can help them.
Exactly. I think it's sometimes hard. Like, once you know, it's hard to, you know, forget all that. Like, you know, we know how to do things in certain, like, quite quickly and things like that. And sometimes it's hard to imagine that, you know, we were doing like one buckle filling in 1.5 hours at uni. Like, that's you know, it's crazy. Like, that's where we were. Like, because it was just, you know, you do the prep and you put your hand up and you wait for the supervisor to come, and it takes like 1.5 hours. You know, that's where we were. Like, we need to remember that. Like, you know, so coming into private practice when everything's like, you know, really quick, that can be overwhelming. Like,
I think because there is, like I said before, there's more dentists, more practices, more competition. I think to be a new grad now, surely is much, much more difficult than it was 15 years ago. I think it's a completely different playing field. So I think that's why these things are important. And I agree, like with this stuff that we're talking about, like the mask and the general approach, I agree with you. I think we need to talk about specific dental things too. And we do that. So we talk about, specific things like, preparing and things like that, which I think perhaps, like Viet said, maybe with that personality of the dentist, and which is perhaps high achieving, who tend not to share their flaws as much. They don't want to weakness. They're probably straight A students from high school, straight high distinctions at uni, like that typical. You can't get high distinctions in real life. It doesn't exist. There'll be a difficult patient there to teach you that you can't always get it right. So I think that's where, it's that shift from university and school where you're used to controlling results, whereas in the real world you can't, and that's where mental health comes into it for a new grad.
That's such a huge point. It is so true. I think because we work with humans and people just, the body is just so different for everybody, how it's going to respond to the treatment. And also everyone's behavior is completely different in terms of how they're going to respond to how you interact with them. So it makes it a lot more challenging. And most dentists were high achievers at some point, and they expect to come into the world still a high achiever. And that's not realistic, is it?
No. And that's what
I'm sure there are still high achievers, but as to be winning every single day for every single case, you're not going to win them.
It's those moving goalposts, right? It's the donkey and the carrot, analogy. It's that constant high expectation, and I think that's what we've observed, and I think it's very close to us. But we've observed this a lot, even in really horrible, in bad ways. Seeing what it can do. So that's why I think we're so passionate about this, like really passionate. I think maybe that old adage of like, just harden up, take a teaspoon of cement, that's got to go. I think we need to just help and share, and I think we need to get rid of that philosophy, and it's not about being, again, I'm not saying go the other way and be completely soft. No, you've got to work hard, you've got to show up, you've got to be prepared. The new grad can prepare as much as they can, but I think we need these extra tools in this modern day because things are more stressful than they were 15 years ago.
Yeah, I love that. So can you guys tell us about, do you guys share, like within your training, do you do any sort of stuff on burnout? Like, how some people get a bit burnt out, like do you have any things that, or any tools that owners can use to sort of recognize burnout within themselves and in the team?
Sure. I think the recognition of burnout, I'll go through that first. The tools I kind of went through before, but I'm happy to go over it a little bit more and relate it to burnout. But recognition, I think that's a really good, important point as owners, because you're kind of the captain of the ship. You need to be knowing what's going on. I think a few things that come up, and I think this is even with myself, I think I'll share openly. Because I read, by the way, my little story, I won't go into detail, but I did burn out and I quit dentistry and I quit. Yeah. I reached a point of burnout in 2014, 15. Yeah. So I reached a point of like, and again, it wasn't just dentistry, it was life, and so I reached that point myself. And so signs would be me being kind of happy if the day got put down, and if there wasn't as many patients, me looking happy to go home early. I think withdrawing from the lunch table and going out to the practice and maybe going for a drive at lunch. That's another thing you can recognize. If you see someone who's normally social and then they start withdrawing, there might be nothing wrong, but again, it's one of the things that you can see. Changes in diet, you might see someone who's maybe relatively healthy, who all of a sudden you see they don't care anymore. You might notice that they are kind of being a bit more self-destructive in their habits, whether it be drinking or smoking or things that that they weren't doing before, or doing it a bit more excessively. You'll see body language changes. So maybe their shoulders will be slumped. I mean, I know they are because we work like that as well, but you might see them, the body language is down. They might not be able to give you eye contact. That's a huge one, especially as new generation, I think they really struggle to give eye contact because they're on their phones all day. No, I'm joking. But
They're all burnt out.
Yeah, so eye contact. I think. Did I miss anything? Did I go over there?
I think the biggest one is just that change in communication, like how they speak. Like, if you get used to talking to certain people, you can sort of pick up changes. Like if they're normally quite talkative and they go a bit more quiet and things like that. Like there's something else there. Like I told a story in our workshops. Like I can. Like in the mornings, I have this routine where I go around to every single room and I say good morning to every single person in the practice. And there's certain people that, I sort of know a bit better just because they've assisted for me for a bit longer. And I can tell when I say good morning to them and how they respond, if there's something on their mind or something that may be stressing them out a fair bit. And, it's that, one is if you can pick up on that. And so for me, like I always check up and say, oh, is everything okay? Obviously, it's quite powerful. Obviously we have Are You Okay Day next week, but that you don't realize how powerful it is because can create this space for people to have a release because they're sort of pushing everything down, right? And when you ask, is everything okay? There's been several times where they just burst out crying. Like it's just that breaking point. I think there's one or two times when it's Shrug's nurse and she had to go home or something. So I kind of left him short. But
was it because of you, Shrug?
He wasn't there yet. He came in and go, what's going on? Like,
lost my nurse.
And that's the thing. Like sometimes they do go home, but sometimes it's just that release they needed, and then they go okay, and then we just have a quick chat, and then they feel better for the day. It's something that we just need to get better at recognizing because it makes a huge difference. Because like let's say I don't ask something, they can hold on to that and they can behave in a way if no one asks them because they don't feel like sharing. That can be detrimental to the team. Like people might go, oh, what's wrong with her, or they may think that there's something wrong with them. That's why someone's being quiet, and it can disturb that sort of chemistry in the team. So it's just understanding that those changes happen first, that change in communication, and just asking, is everything okay? Like I think it's very powerful.
And even if they're not in the mood to respond, I think the very fact that you just ask, that's enough. Like they don't necessarily have to share their feelings. They might not feel like it, but they will walk away and go, okay, surely it's going to have a positive effect if someone's just checked in real quick, and I think that's the main thing, that they know that, at least they know that this person's approachable. I have an opportunity to be vulnerable if I feel like it, And again, on that, I think before in my life, when people ask me, are you okay? I wouldn't say a thing, right? Because I'm not going to share. But for some reason, when you build chemistry with a team over time, you do feel you're like, actually, no, I'm not okay. And because you feel safe enough to actually express your feelings, that's the environment you're trying to create, So I don't think on day one, everyone's going to start expressing their feelings. That's not what's going to happen. And you probably, I think it's more of you got to build trust, like we said before. But I think how to build trust is if someone consistently asks me how I'm doing and it's genuine, that person I'm probably going to slowly start trusting. So I think that's an important point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think we all have this desire to be seen, heard, and accepted. Like feel a sense of belonging. And like Shrug said, just the fact that you ask someone, that means that you see them, you notice that they're struggling. And for me, like if someone was asking me, and I go, oh, they've actually noticed, like they actually care, like, and that's enough. Sometimes you have to say anything.
That helped me a lot back, in 2014 when I did eventually. The manager at our practice who's still there, she would often ask me how I was doing, and I really appreciated it. She would always ask, and we'd have a quick chat, and and in the end, a lot of my, I think, solutions came from the conversations that we all had. So yeah, it was pretty good.
That's amazing. So, if you do see someone with burnout, what's something that owners should do? Do they give them days off? Is that like okay, how about a couple of days off here? Or
Well, that's-
what do you do?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to just that conversation, and it comes down to the owner actually believing in mental health, because sometimes it's tough, because like when the dentist that we had at our place cut down the days, obviously that's going to have an effect on production, right? But it comes down to, you've got to have that belief that it's important to you, and no matter what, if they go, oh, I'm going to take a few months off, try to like 1.5 years off, so it's if it's important, then you stand by it and you do what you can to help, I guess. And it's just about conversation about what can we do, and if you have that discussion, and if you have that sort of connection already, they can be quite understanding and go, oh, how about cut down just certain hours. It's not saying they're going to cut down completely, but they understand that you have a business run, as well as we're understanding that they're stressed out. So where can we meet in the middle? And so once again, that's the team that we have. And as Chirag said, you don't get that straight away. You don't just start that. It's people need to understand, when we're trying to introduce this idea of mental health into a team, it's a slow burn. It's a real slow burn. It takes a long time to build that sort of trust, right? Because sometimes you're undoing a lot of the damage that we've done in the past, and it takes people a long time to trust, because sometimes they're just sitting there waiting for you to, or waiting for the place to go back to where it was before. So you're just waiting.
Or they're like, is this just a trick to get me to do?
Exactly. Exactly. There's always an ulterior motive, right? For us to do something. What's in it for you? Why are we doing this? So it takes time to build that trust. Again, you know what? I'm sticking by this. It's going to cost me a bit more money here and there. We do it. I'm sure a lot of practices do it. We run social events and things like that. That costs money, but it also helps with that sort of mental well-being. It sort of creates that more connection, things like that.
And what I was going to say to answer the question, so you said, what do you do with something like that? You give them a few days off. I think that's the whole point we're trying to make, is that why don't we implement these things so we don't get burnt out? So the whole, yes, if someone's burnt out right now, you don't say, oh, try some conscious breathing, you'll feel better. No, they're going to need to probably a bit more help, right? But the whole point of what we're trying to do is to create an environment where burnout doesn't happen, right? Where we see signs much, much earlier, but we also have tools in place already that we've become so self-aware that we see ourselves burn that way. So with the tools I mentioned before, that was going to be my answer to your question of how do we help people with burnout? Well, the answer is we prevent it. We prevent it from happening. So, with the breathing, the introspection, and the other exercises, the meditation exercises, and also just really the conversation, facilitating the conversation first about what is mental health. My theory is that right now, most people's normal is stressed. 15 years ago, our normal probably wasn't as stressed as it is now. So, and we throw COVID on top, and then all of a sudden, our normal is almost high alert, right? So our normal now is becoming stressed. So our normal is cortisol in our body. Our normal is fight or flight. Our normal is have that cheeky meal because I don't have time to get lunch. So our normal is what's leading us to burnout. So our whole point is that let's have a look at this. We just want to shine some light on this and say, well, do we have to function this way? Can we not? I believe we can run as successful a business, as productive, and ironically, more productive with people that are mentally healthy, because you're going to get better results. And yes, there's a slow burn, but it's also long term because there's less turnover and all that things that we spoke about. There's less sick leave, there's less turnover, there's happier people, there's dentists who are mentally present, who all of a sudden can speak to the patient in a lot better manner, and all of a sudden you're getting more benefit. So I think it's a compound effect both ways. Stress goes one way and the other one goes the other way. And I think with stress, your productivity stays around the same because you might change stuff over, blah, 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 but you may not get as much growth. You may initially, but long term, maybe not. Or you will if you keep finding the best staff members. You'd be lucky if you do that, which is great. But if you want to build a team over time, I think prevention is what we were really talking about prevention, not cure.
Prevention is always better than cure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love
awareness,
this.
just awareness. That's all.
Yeah. So obviously right now there's COVID-19. You guys have done some sessions around Queensland and stuff. How can people get onto you guys if we want to do training with that, for our team and everything with you guys?
Yeah, I think it's just opening a discussion, like just sending us an email and we can sort of have a chat. Unfortunately, you're absolutely right. Like COVID's sort of thrown a span in the works. Like we've had to cancel a few workshops and whatnot in Sydney and Melbourne, which is the reason why we're sort of working on trying to create something online. But obviously in Queensland it's a bit better. Like if you are in Queensland, we're quite happy. Yeah. Very lucky up here, unfortunately, for those down south. But feel free to move up. Houses prices go up, unfortunately. So we do run a workshop in Praxis. That's how we prefer to do our workshops with the team, just because of the fact that while online like discussion is great, I don't think you can ever replace being in person and just creating that connection. And we think that you'll get a better result that way. But we do have workshop for Praxis, but we also have one just for dentists at the moment that we are running in Brisbane. So those are our two that we have at the moment.
So I think to reiterate, the ones with cancel, for example, I think one would like us to go still to submit them, but then we're open to doing online as well. But it's just to reiterate what Viet's saying, I think it is really unfortunate right now that we wish we could just come down and just start work, But I think just know that we are open to doing online. Is that okay? We're open to it.
Yeah, we're in the process of putting it together.
Yeah, putting it together. But if that's something that people are interested in, please let us know, and we're happy to help, because I don't think, my personal opinion is that we shouldn't just wait this out. Like if people want to do it sooner, I think we will try and put some work in it and get it done. I think it's important. I think in these times, especially Victoria and New South Wales, of course, and we feel
our stress levels are up here. We need your
we really do. Like I feel that it must be really hard, and we're here even just for a chat. Just chuck us an email.
I think that's the thing. Like, I get a lot of patients come in like after lockdowns that we have. Obviously, nowhere near as long or as many as what you have down south. And they go, "Oh, how are you? How are you coping?" And I go, "Look, I'm just grateful that we can be open. Like, we're so lucky up here compared to down south." And that's one of our tools, anyways. But it's sort of it's just that perspective, right? It's just understanding that we just gotta take each day as it comes. And right now we're quite lucky up here. And just got to be grateful for that. Yeah.
Amazing. Look, you guys sound like you have a wonderful team. I can't say I must say I am almost envious, but I think my team is pretty awesome too. So, but it sounds like you have something that works really well for you. And look, the mental health thing, that's something that I'm constantly trying to learn as well. So, thank you so much for jumping on today. I think, this is definitely an amazing tool that everyone should jump onto. Especially at the moment with the whole COVID situation. There are lots of what I'm finding with my own team, and I'm speaking for myself, I don't know about other teams, but the start stops are actually sometimes even harder than, because it is right, you're completely right. Your stress levels get a little bit high, and that becomes a new norm because you don't know when you're going to be under lockdown again. So those start stops are probably, making people burn out and even more stressful. And then my poor team, the start stops, we have it, and then they have to come in to see some patients anyway, so they don't actually get a break.
It's difficult, and that's where the tools come in handy. I think especially the conscious breathing one is amazing. Like that's stuff like that. They really help with that type of stress, where you get that kind of physiological fight or flight kind of stuff that's happening. I think we can work on this from a scientific perspective, and also and other perspectives as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, do you guys have like a website or a Facebook page thing that you can share? If you could, Viet, that would be amazing if you just share it in the group and then people can find you, or people can probably PM you as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, email
Wonderful.
and
Any last words before I let you guys go?
Not really. I'm just really grateful for the opportunity, and I think all we want is, you know, we don't expect everyone to do our workshop and whatnot, but I think it'd be great just to have that conversation with the team, just to create like that safe space where you can just, you know, just talk about it, just bring it out and open. And sometimes that's all people need, just the ability to come to work and know, you know what, there's no shame in saying, oh, I'm not having a good day. And yeah, I think that would be a great start anyways.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, thanks so much for having us. You know, we really appreciate it. It was lovely to talk to you. And
Pleasure's all mine.
yeah, and yeah, just to the people listening, like just feel free to email. Like we're happy to answer questions, and yeah, we just want to like Bea said, I think our intention is to share, you know, what we've learned and what we've been through, and it's helped us, I think, so much. And you know, like I really, yeah, why not share it? You know, that's something that's really, it's been such a significant shift. I think that's funny for both of us, and I think that's, you know, why we're just so happy to share and look forward to working with everyone.
Amazing. Exciting times ahead for both of you. All the best with rolling out this, well, you've already rolled it out, this training, and I'm sure once COVID has settled, it's just going to take off. So yeah, thank you so much for both your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.